X Nui. Welcome to our little studio here in Metru Nui. This is where the early planning is taking place for our little Mangai project. Now, the purpose of this film is to bring you up to date with some of the plans for the Mangai project. But before I do, I just want to say a few words about the site of the Mangai project. Metru Nui. Metru Nui. Ah, that's better. Much more squiggly and urban. Now, we all know the story of the Toa Metru. 6 heroes who saved the heart of Metru Nui and fought an ancient evil. But that's only half the story. Before the Toa Metru, there were 11 legends of Metru Nui. Each great warriors in their own right and masters of their elemental energies. Named the Mangai, or Protector in the Matoran language, these heroes were led by the legendary Toa Lhikan, Master of Fire. This project will tell their story. Our ambition is simple. 4 seasons of 6 episodes chronicling the story of the Toa Mangai and their heroic sacrifice. Hi there. One of the characters who will be featuring in our little Mangai project is Kodan, chronicler of Metru Nui. Now, Kodan has a number of favorite pastimes, which include reading and playing sports that he comes up with. However, his favorite pastime is writing. Now, included with the series, we will also be producing a series of short stories titled Tales of the Mangai, written by our chronicler Kodan. Now, these tales will flesh out the world of the Mangai series and elaborate on characters and circumstances that occur. Now, these will be also accompanied by an audiobook, which will have stills and beautiful scenery rendered by the animation team. And now, it is my privilege to introduce Tales of the Mangai, Chapter 1, Kedek's Bargain. Thank you.
From the desk of Kodan, chronicler of Metru Nui. The following is a series of excerpts from a journal recovered from the Trencron Peninsula. Written by a Matoran named Kedek, it is believed that the Toa of Air mentioned in many of the journal's final entries is Toa Nidiki, Metru Nui's Toa of Air. The journal was found in a partially collapsed cavern, alongside evidence of former habitation. The area appears to have been deserted quickly. None of Kedek's other personal effects were able to be located. This journal seems to be around 7 to 10 years old. For brevity, sections of the journal have been omitted. The original copy will be retained at the Wall of History for record-keeping purposes. Day 571. Today, the Makuta visited us again. The last time she was here, she fought off a horrific beast. The sight hasn't left my mind. That sickly pink form, oozing as its halves slid apart, split by the Makuta's vicious battle axe. The mistress of the acid falls, they call her, and for good reason. It was almost elegant. I watched her sling the great fleshy lumps into the falls, which hissed and blackened as they dissolved under the flow. Makuta visited us today for a different reason. Her appearance cast a deadly pall on the village. Work seemed to halt, and all eyes were trained on her, and me. She had come with a proposition. She knew that there were more beasts that could threaten my village and our operation. She was also careful to point out that as the village leader, it is my business to know the comings and goings of the area around the acid falls. So, in return for her protection, I would furnish Makuta with regular and detailed reports of the state of the area, and turn in any Matoran who would oppose her. With so many looking to me to keep the village safe, it was impossible to refuse. Satisfied, she flew from the cavern like some sort of sick insect. I shuddered at the sight. She left a trail of black smoke that hung in the air. Later the same day, I saw something truly out of the ordinary. Here, where the general consensus is that the Great Spirit has forsaken us. A Toa? It couldn't be. And I needn't call her back this soon on what is only an unsubstantiated sighting. Nevertheless, there will be more guards near the entrance tonight. Day 575. This morning a Matoran came to tell me about a party who would endeavor to leave the peninsula. At first I was utterly relieved. Finally I could escape this wretched stinking spit of land. But the relief was soured by a pit in my stomach when I thought of my village. Here is where I had to stay. Where all had to stay. I asked her to show me the boat. It was a small, hastily assembled craft, with space for about 6 Matoran. Good Ga-Matoran craftsmanship went into it, and its hull was shored up by Fee-Matoran steel, perfect for the jagged, rocky shores of the peninsula. It was the best these Matoran could do, but it would get the job done. I feigned hearing one of the monstrous Rahi, and ushered the Ga-Matoran back to the village. Once she was out of sight, I drew Makuta's sigil on the beach sand and crushed a light stone in my palm, scattering its dust into the shallow lines I carved. I lit a flame in its center, which caught on the lightstone shards and erupted into a low green flame. The shadows suddenly grew thick around me, and the Makuta appeared so abruptly I was startled. She visibly fumed as I explained the escapee's plan. That evening I told the Ga-Matoran I could not accompany her away from the peninsula. It's my duty to our village, I had said, but I will send more along when I can. I watched from afar as she, the Fee-Matoran, 2 Po-Matoran, and a Sea-Matoran boarded the small craft and embarked. They made it about 2 bio from the shore when a black mass burst from beneath the waves, capsizing the boat. I watched the Matoran of Water and Matoran of Psionic swim for their lives as the Makuta lifted the Fee-Matoran. The 2 Po-Matoran did not resurface. I could not bear to watch what she did next. A quiet head count later that night revealed to me that none returned. Is it right to trade their lives like this? It must be. A whole village for the cost of a few traitors? It's a dereliction of duty, not to mention unity. But I still have reservations. It's nothing. It had to be done. Day 577. I saw the Toa again today, skulking around near the village. I know him to be a Toa for certain. A Toa of air wearing what seems to be a mask of stealth. He was stalking a Rahi wearing an infected Kanohi. I watched him kill and feed on it mercilessly. He seems to be as desperate as we are. I'm weighing my options. Do I contact Makuta again? Do I bring the Toa into our fold? This would be a prize indeed for the Makuta, but am I willing to give up a Toa for what? My villagers are starving. Some have gone a very long time without food, but the work must continue. If I can get this Toa into the village, he can help us gather supplies and sustenance. But what would I get from the Makuta for turning him in? I will have to sleep on it tonight, I think. Day 578. This morning I contacted Makuta and informed her of a Toa in the area. She was characteristically severe. My orders are to keep an eye on him, so keep an eye I shall. In fact, as I write, I'm preparing to hunt the Toa. At the right moment, I will strike from the shadows and bring him to our village. I will update this entry when I return. My plan was rebuffed. The Toa caught me as I sprang upon him and demanded to know my intent. Apparently, I hadn't been the best at remaining unheard. I told him my name and my position as leader of Ulkoro. He only offered me what I already knew, his element. Despite my prodding, he wouldn't tell me his name. He did agree to accompany me back to the village, though. My people were awed by his physique and powers. The Toa grinned with pride as they begged him to demonstrate his elemental abilities again and again. I could feel a sliver of hope growing among them. That only makes this that much harder. Day 580. I went with the Toa on a hunt today. We moved through the treetops searching for bird rahi to bring back to the village and eat. Sure enough, I pointed out a nest to the Toa, and we moved in. The 4 gecko in the nest sprang into the air as we approached. I leapt and grabbed onto the tail of the smallest as they took off. The Toa quickly followed, lifting himself on a column of air. Clinging onto the rahi for dear life, I braced to feel the rush of wind against my mask, prepared to hold my breath as the bird reached top speed. However, no such thing happened. In fact, I pried my eyes open to see the gecko struggling to keep its speed up, its 3 brethren vanishing over the canopy ahead. Its chest heaved as it laboriously breathed. Suddenly the gecko dropped from the air. I braced myself and gripped the bird's back tightly. The rahi and I fell, landing on branch after branch before hitting the ground hard. I stood and dusted myself off as the Toa floated down on a gust of wind. The gecko was clearly ill. Its eyes were dull and its breathing was loud and ragged. The Toa paid it no mind as he killed it. "This isn't a place for mercy," he told me. "It's eat or be eaten here." Sure enough, a creature came along to turn the 2 of us from eaters to eaten. One of the gelatinous horrors of the peninsula crashed through the trees, nearly crushing the Toa of air with a falling log. In an instant, the Toa dashed off, leaving the gecko's corpse. I was stranded. I yelled out for his help as I dragged the rahi's body, but I couldn't even hear myself scream over the sound of the creature's roars. A pink tentacle slammed me onto my back. All of a sudden, the clearing went quiet. I looked up and saw the Toa atop the creature's back, scythe buried in its brain. He dragged it carelessly from the gooey flesh of the monster, stepped off of its back, and dispassionately helped me to my feet. "Sorry," he muttered tersely, as he left me to drag the gecko home. Day 583. The Toa has been living outside the village ever since I brought him here. I have to pray to whichever legend will listen that he's still in his hut when I go to see him this morning. Metru Nui? No. Artaka? Maybe. Karzani? I can't imagine a place worse than this. Our village has been prospering since I introduced the Toa. He's been keeping us alive. I haven't had much of a chance to express my gratitude, though. The Toa keeps us at arm's length, doing what he must and never more. That might be a good thing. I don't want to be too attached when the time comes for Makuta to return. Today I was at my post by the acid falls. It was my turn to collect the burning green liquid that poured over the cliffs and bring it into the bottling station. A couple weeks back, our village was shaken when one of our number went missing as he worked. Lost in thought as I was, I barely had time to react as I took a false step, the cliffside crumbling away beneath my foot. The corrosive acid falls had carved a series of holes in the ground by their path, forming a system of caves, cliffs, and bridges. It was near the top that the acid bottling station was located, and it was a short walk to push the collector along the cliff to the falls. As I slipped, I grabbed onto the collector, tipping the vat over and pouring its contents onto the acid-locked dirt. Narrowly avoiding burning myself, I swung my body back as the acid fell into the chasm. My hand was losing its purchase. I was certain that I was about to be the next victim of the falls. In an instant, I was swept from the cliff's edge, winded by a powerful force. It was our resident Toa of Air, who had seen my plight and rescued me at the last moment. We landed on an adjacent cliff. I watched the collector plummet from the cliffside, slam loudly into a bluff, finally careen into the pool of acid at the base of the falls. "It's just a tool," the Toa commented. "It can be replaced." It seemed like he was trying to comfort me. I had better make arrangements for another collector to be sent to the village. Day 585. The Toa still won't tell me his name. Today I stood firmly at the door of his hut and demanded he tell me his name, by order of Kedek, leader of Old Koro. He simply laughed, saying a Matoran held no sway over him. He pushed past me to leave, grabbing his scythe as he did. Despite my warnings that today would not be a safe day to hunt, he entered the wilderness, and I found myself tailing him. The guards had spotted wild Rakshi in the woods last night, and I knew that even one had the potential to match a Toa. We did see a Rakshi, sure enough. A Rakshi of plant control, one of the worst breeds one could expect around here. The Toa kept us out of sight. I did my best to camouflage my blue and green armor amidst the foliage, but he had the power of a mask of stealth at his disposal. Cloaked, we watched a muaka spring from the trees to consume the Rakshi, eager for its favorite food. The wilderness suddenly came to life, branches reaching out to ensnare the muaka and constrict it. The Toa's hand over my mouth kept me from screaming in terror as thorn vines tore into the cat Rahi. Once the muaka ceased breathing, the Toa of Air picked up a small stone and tossed it in the opposite direction of the village, keeping it aloft for a time on a wind gust before it audibly dropped to the ground. The Rakshi turned its head in the direction of the sound and stalked into the tree line on the hunt for its source. I turned and saw the Toa shaking in fear. When I asked, he pretended not to know what I was talking about. Day 589. The Toa has had a single mind about the Rakshi for the past few days. He says it's unsafe to let it freely roam the peninsula. I've tried to tell him that these things are normal, but he won't hear it. I can't tell if he's still afraid, or if he has begun to genuinely care about our safety. He left this morning, trying to track it. I would have followed, if not for the telepathic contact I received from Makuta. She was angry. She demanded to know about the status of the Toa. Turns out, the past couple of weeks I had forgotten to keep her updated. Not that it mattered, because she had been probing my brain crystal. She didn't like what she saw. I tried to tell her that she could come do what she wished with the Toa, but she wouldn't direct her fury away from me. I stopped hearing her voice in my head a few moments ago, and I've been writing hastily since. Now I must go alert the village guards and have the gate closed. Makuta will be here soon, and we are in danger. I can only hope that the Toa will escape her wrath. From the desk of Kodan, chronicler of Metru Nui. This journal seems troubling, if it truly describes our Toa Nadiki. I have heard stories of the horrors of the Trenkrom Peninsula, but never how they affected those who live there. The wanton killing and cold cowardice is unbecoming of a Toa. In addition, this Kedek's moral character is complicated, to say the least, and it is nothing if not interesting how he justifies his decisions. I suppose I can say I've learned about life on the peninsula, at least.
Here we are in the animation studio, where all the magic happens. This is where animators come every day to work on their highly detailed works of line art and cell shading and animation. Here's one of our animators now, Betty. Say hi, Betty.
Hi, Betty.
Isn't she a doll? What are you working on now, Betty? And now we splash some color on it. Isn't that a beaut? Now, here to talk about the rest of the project is my good friend Aiden. He runs a little segment on our project called Aiden Interviews, where he interviews various members of the project to get their insight on the behind-the-scenes work. Now, this next segment is from one of those interviews where he and I chew the fat. I hope you enjoy.
But I guess one question I would have is why choose such a rather obscure section of the Bionicle lore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because most people, like most fan projects of the scale, usually choose something like 2001, the island of Matanui, the Toa running around collecting masks, all of that stuff. And I would say that's, a pretty iconic visual of Bionicle. But the reason that I decided to move in a 2004 type direction is because number one, I think the story of 2001 has been overtold. Like it's a great story. It's iconic. It's whatever, but we've been there a lot. And I mean, it's not a criticism. There have been a lot of really good things created in 2001, but I guess I just wanted to see some more content from the other years of Bionicle. And one day I was sitting there thinking, why don't we see any more of this? And I just decided that if anybody was going to create something, then it might as well be me. So that I guess that's the motivation there. And 2004 is one of my favorite Bionicle years. It definitely beats out the first three for me. So.
That's a pretty bold statement, if I have to say so myself. But as far as
I definitely don't
goes,
say it's the best, but it's my personal favorite.
It was the first year that stepped away from the beginnings and stuff, and it was Legends of Metru Nui and stuff like that. And you had the new builds for the Toa. They looked all very tall, I guess you could say the least.
Yeah.
And they introduced, I guess, more storyline. You met Makuta in his semi-prime, becoming prime. And so it's
Ultimate Duma. Yeah.
Oh, Ultimate Duma, let alone the set.
Yeah.
No. I have found one. No, I took them apart to rebuild what should have been built. All right, here's one. Well, as far as that goes, why do you think the community needs this project after, oh my God, 10 years we're old. Over 10 years now, granted, since 2004. Why create it now?
I think we're at a very volatile point in the evolution of the Bionicle community, because we've gotten to a place where there isn't really much hope that Lego is going to acknowledge us, going to do anything with the IP. And I don't blame them. Right now, it's not really, it's having difficulty being marketed, it's whatever. So we're reaching a point where the community is waiting, we're waiting on something to change. We're waiting on something to invest our creativity in. And I think the community needs these types of projects to remind us that we are storytellers. It's not just delegated to, corporations and other entities. Like, we as a community can create quality stories that can potentially, rival some of the best. So why, if we're waiting around for something to happen, waiting around for Lego to acknowledge us or somebody to acknowledge us, it could happen, it could whatever, but we've reached a point. Yeah.
We lose control over it at that point.
Exactly. And I know Faber's been pushing BioVival and all of that, which, that's a controversial thing, but he, somewhere in all of that, I think he does have a point that, quote, the story is in our hands. I think if you can get anything from Faber's, whatever, that's the goal of the next generation of Bionicle, if you want to call it G3, if you want to call it whatever. And other projects like Mask of Power and Red Star Games, stuff, different projects, I would call that G3. And the Mangai Project, it's a part of that. So
thank you for coming with us today on our journey. We here at the Mangai Project are incredibly excited for our upcoming pilot episode. But before you go, I just have one more little treat for you. This is a short storyboarded scene from the upcoming episode, which features a bumbling little team of dark hunters who later become known as the Paraka. Now, this is an early storyboard, so it's not fully animated. It still needs to be cleaned up, and color needs to be... Regardless, thank you very much for coming on our little journey, and I'll see you all next year. Thank you.
Everyone who thinks this is a bad idea, scream at the top of your lungs.
Shut up and steer. Do you want all of Metru Nui to hear us coming?
Are we there yet?
Here!
What?
If our information is right, the sea cave should be just below.
So, who's going down there?
I thought we all would. It might take 3 of us to—
Someone has to get the boat! And I volunteer.
I volunteer to guard Avac guarding the boat, and make sure he doesn't leave without us.
You heard the Shadowed One. You know what's supposed to be down there. If I go down alone, I'll end up a light snack. So, who's going to help me?
I'll flip you for it. Looks like I win.
Stay with the boat. And the boat stays here.
Under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Sustain casualties. We need immediate evac. Unstoppable. It has 4 arms. There are 2 other hunters and they call them the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is involved. Ah!